Hi, I'm Ashley Adamson, founder of the Trans Club. If you'd like to join a community of other people who are trans, sharing their journey, interacting with me, chat with me and other people in the server, you can hit that Discord link down below. Also, you can buy my book and support me on Patreon if this is something that you would like. Please like and subscribe. I don't know what I'm going to talk about today, but I just sometimes need to do this because I just think it's important to level with people, to just be real and honest and just share where you're at sometimes. And you know that feeling where you just don't know where you're going right now with this? You may say, what am I doing? Or where am I going right now? That's kind of where I'm feeling at this exact moment. I've been on a tear with making videos, and it's just, at some point, I feel like I'm not doing anything worthy of my time or just of other people's time. I get sometimes this sense that I'm not good enough. Do you ever feel like you're not good enough? Whether that's because you're trans and you feel like you're not good enough to cis society or to other people in your world, or maybe just because you don't have the confidence that you would like in certain situations and you just don't feel good enough. Where does this feeling come from within you? How does it manifest in your body? Does it show up here? Does it show up here? Does it kind of like act like that? The thing that I've noticed with confidence and how you feel about things is this really subtle subconscious effect that happens within your being, and it kind of just is a little bit of a storyteller. Like how I kind of locate it is whenever I hear a little story being whispered in my consciousness, I take a look at that to make sure that that is a good story. And if it's not a good story, out with that story, because that story is just going to hold you back. It's this thing called self-authorship, the idea of being able to write your own story and tell your own narrative. And it's probably one of the most underestimated tools and techniques to how you construct your identity and who you are. Because, I mean, let's face it, like, identity is really cool. It's really cool to identify as something. But if all you are is your demographic, as in, I'm trans and that's my identity and that's who I am, you're kind of boring. I'm sorry to say it, but if that's all you can say and you're just a trans archetype of other trans people, you've just a trans meme, or you're just focused on absorbing all of the trans content online and just emulating all of that, Catgirls, hello? I don't really think that's worthy of an identity. I don't. Like, I think it's great that you can start there, but you better sure as hell not become the archetype of the narrative that you've just constructed and just stayed that way. Because I think that's a waste. Like, why would you want to just be a template of something else? I was in the market yesterday and I saw a queer trans man who had like rainbows on and a mustache and like wore a hat that's like, oh, I'm queer as fuck, and wore like a necklace that had like spikes on it. And what it said to me is, this person is really like beautiful and loud in their expression, but they're also not really setting themselves apart from the Portland trans archetype of being this kind of gender-bending, queer, kinky person. Like, it's kind of an archetype, maybe you've encountered this or seen this, to be trans and non-monogamous and kinky. Like, those kind of all kind of fit together. Maybe there's an OnlyFans thrown into the mix. That's one trans archetype, and it's fine, but it also seems to be counterintuitive to this idea that we should celebrate our own uniqueness and be unique and kind of break rules if all you're doing is just setting yourself into another set of rules that become your new construct for who you are. Like, it doesn't seem like it really achieves the goal of what you're trying to achieve. And if that's your lifestyle, and oh my God, being non-monogamous, if you're polyamorous, whoo, it's like your lifestyle is all about your relationships, because how else do you have the time to take care and have several budding relationships? I feel like at this exact moment, maybe I'm raging a little bit, but I think it has to be said, especially by another trans person within the community, because if I was a cis white male that was heterosexual, you sure as hell wouldn't be listening to me, and you sure as hell would be blaming me for some random stuff regarding the patriarchy and all of that. Why I need to call this out is because it's a red flag, I would say, in the community. This idea that your identity is your demographic, that because you are trans, this has become who you are, and this is your identity, and that's it. That's where the buck stops. I picked up a girl on Sunday who was a new friend that I got introduced to who's trans. And she's amazing. She's like a doctor. She is really, really smart, really successful, and she's trans. And her whole story is, I was a part of this huge successful family. I came out as trans, and then they abandoned me, and I was homeless, and I figured out my way to being who I am and making my way to the top. And she's going to be more famous once her book comes out, and like, all to her. She's awesome. But our entire conversation was around her story. Even when I'm not talking, she would find a way to bring everything back to her story that she's writing and sharing and wanting to tell. And I find this with a lot of trans people. They're so egocentric that all they can talk about is their transition and their story. And I've been there, and I know what that's like, and I see it all the time. And this is why I'm calling it out. Because you can get, I understand that being trans is like this huge thing, right? Like transitioning, you think about it every day, right? You think about it probably almost every other second, right? It's a huge thing. It becomes the center of your experience. It becomes the center and focal point of everything, and your body and your mind start to validate this loop, this thought loop of it's your story, it's your journey, you're overcoming, you're growing, you're expanding. It's that thing, right? And so you can program yourself, I believe, and create those neural pathways that reinforce the idea that it's all about your story, and that it's all about reinforcing your story, so that way you can feel great and feel rewarded, and your ego and a sense of identity become intertwined with this narrative. But then suddenly, you being an interesting person is gone. Because all you know how to do when you sit at the dinner table and talk to someone is you know how to talk about your transition. And not every single, but a lot of really interesting people that I thought would be interesting in person, all they do is they talk about their transition. Like one of the coolest voice people that I know who's really famous, all she did is talk about her transition and her FFS and the things that she's doing. And there's no like, what's going on with you? How are you? Tell me about yourself. It's all about everything's interesting only when it's under the lens of her. Same thing with this last person that I talked about. And same thing with this cool trans person I reached out to on Instagram and thought was really cool, an artist. Just wants to talk about themselves. Have you noticed that I haven't talked about myself in this video? I'm just talking about this idea. That's kind of the important thing is if we think about ideas and we talk about ideas and we transcend our transition in terms of the center of our identity, then we can become dynamic people that have a life beyond our transition. And I think this is kind of like, this is an important thing for integrating into society. How do you become a part of society if you don't talk to other people, if you don't become an interesting person? How do you make friends? How do you engage with other people? It's kind of like the only place where you can, if you only have this trans identity as your focal point, is to be in trans communities where everyone else is just in an echo chamber talking about their own transition, and that's all they care about. And that's something that I'm fully aware of in my trans Discord community, making sure that it's not just about being trans, but it's about being a hero. It's about being something more than just being trans. But being trans is a big part of your transformation, but you sure as hell better find something more than just being trans by the end of your transition. Because if you come out the other end and you've transitioned completely, and I know a trans girl that did this, she completely transitioned, she got all her things done. Now what? She didn't know what to do. She didn't know who to be because her whole life was around her transition. And it's kind of be brutal to say, but she's not that interesting. And we're not really friends anymore because there's nothing to talk about because we don't talk about our transition. And I'm, for the most part, mostly done with my transition. So I just would like you to think about this. I'd like you to ask some questions like, what interests you besides transitioning? What aspects of you are worth developing and growing? What problems and constraints do you have in your life that are going to help build character and make you a more dynamic person? The way to become more interesting is often to find things that actually are constraints and learn to find yourself through that constraint to become a better person. If you'd like to talk to me, you can write a comment down below and let me know what you think. You can also join the Trans.Club community in the Discord link down below. I'll see you in another episode soon. Thank you. Bye.